Hello everyone, welcome to another cold, rainy day rendition of a video in my car. I'm going to try to relay this message as best that I can, as we are now in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. And although I haven't really been stumbling on my words or having any real problems in communication, even though my astrology is based heavily around Mercury, I know it is powerful and it can have some effects, but I will try to explain this as best as I can. So I think it's important to discuss, our spiritual history, because obviously it's not discussed in history books, and learning from history can help one not to repeat it, hopefully. Even though that's not what happened throughout history, even though I'm sure they had history being taught to them. But I think we may have finally learned our lesson, and I think it's important that we revise what may have happened in ancient times. So, the story of Atlantis, they're quite an advanced civilization. So it was, at the time, existed Atlantis, Lemuria, and another one, something with Mu, but I think that was Lemuria, so I'm not sure. But Atlantis and Lemuria existed for sure. And Lemuria was kind of like the divine feminine civilization, whereas Atlantis was more the divine masculine. And they were both fifth dimensionally based in terms of vibration. And Atlantis was really centered around crystals and healing, but then they actually even developed a lot more in terms of their technology, whereas Lemuria didn't really develop that much. Didn't develop the technology that Atlantis later on developed, but they still had their necessary technology and highly advanced technology, probably more advanced than we currently have, obviously. But what happened is that Atlantis actually became so obsessed with this development in technology, because they saw how much they were gaining as a society from it. They were benefiting from this advancement in technology, but really that wasn't being matched by their advancement in spirituality, right? So it's kind of prevalent today. It's actually very prevalent today, where a lot of us have all these smartphones, and smart technologies and developed technologies, but we aren't developed spiritually. We aren't in tune with ourselves. We don't really take care of our spiritual side. And that's why technology can be a two-way blade, a two-way sword. Because if it falls into the wrong hands, it can be used for obviously negative purposes, while in better hands and more conscientious hands, it can be used for positive purposes. So like a gun, right? Like a gun doesn't necessarily go out and shoot someone, unless you're from a different perspective, you may think so. But in someone's hands that may need some sort of protection from the situation, from an exterior threat, it can be used for protection, right? It can be used for positively in that area, at least. While someone that it wants to control or dominate or take advantage, potentially murder someone, it can be used for that negative purpose. So what happened with Atlantis is they were vibrating highly, but at the time the Earth wasn't protected by a federation like we have now, where our solar system and I believe even this galaxy, I'm not sure how far their outreach is, but the Galactic Federation definitely protects the solar system from outside threats and outside intervention. But at that time there was nothing. There was no federation, there was no conglomerate of planets or ET races helping watch over us, because we were still a very young race. And many of us currently incarnated today actually were incarnated at that time. So, we're kind of repeating the cycles to see if we've progressed, really. But what happened was that a negative group of ETs called the Orions and their minions intervened. And not to the point where they just took over everything. It was more like they intervened and they introduced flattery and they introduced the ego, where Atlanteans suffered a drop in consciousness and they began to feel entitled, or important rather, proud, but you know, the negative sides of all of these. I don't know if is there a good side to being entitled? I don't know. So in that notion, then they began feeling like, you know, your typical tyrannical nation that wants to invade other nations because they're under the impression that this piece of land belongs to them, really, and they're doing a good thing, right? So through this introducing of flattery to the Atlanteans, they were able to let their more logical, rational side take over, even though it wasn't rational or whatsoever what they did. But they let that take over, and they started focusing largely on developing their technology rather than their spiritual aspects. And because of this, their ego got really out of control, where it began to dominate them, and they ended up invading Lemuria. I missed the point, I'm sorry. Before that, in order to invade Lemuria, in order to make all these progressions in technology, they agreed to hand over basically their free will and the free will to the planet, if that makes sense. I don't know how exactly, what exactly the details were to that, but in this exchange, the Orions gained pretty much full control over the planet in exchange for advanced technologies that they provided for the Atlanteans. And the Lemurians stood no chance, because they maintained a balance rather than full force aggression or full force defense. So they were just focused, you know, on keeping to themselves and not really worrying about the Atlanteans, considering that they were on their own spiritual path. But the Atlanteans fell basically to a fourth dimensional consciousness, and they got so powerful in which they were about to pretty much destroy the world. And I'm not sure if it was the Orions that caused the pole shift or Source itself that caused the pole shift to sink the Atlanteans and prevent the Earth from being destroyed. But there was a pole shift. Atlantis sunk, was put underwater to hide away and basically forget about all of that, restart civilization. And Lemurians and the other civilizations went underground with all the other positive ETs in the hope that one day there will be a new cycle, a new age, which is now, where we remembered our true selves and we realized our mistakes, and we learned from them. We created a new Atlantis, one that would succeed. Now, this actually kept playing out over time through various cycles and even more apocalypses and more restarts of civilizations, where empires rose, made the same mistakes, fell, rose, made the same mistakes, fell. But now there's no more of that. Now we have help from so many beings in the universe. The sun, the galactic sun, Source is sending energy through the suns, from our fellow ETs. They're all helping us to raise our consciousness. There are too many people that are now awake. There are too many star seeds on this planet now, you know, indigo children with more strands of DNA that can hold more light, that have raised their awareness, that have raised their consciousness, and that really have an intuitive, like we all do really, an intuitive sense of right and wrong, of love, right? They're tapped into love, because a loving being would never do something like that to another being, because it realizes how connected everything is. So Atlantis fell, and you know, I would say it's underwater in the Atlantic Ocean because of the name. And Plato and Many others have discovered that, well, Plato's map had a drawing and the location of Atlantis, really, which was located in West Africa. If you ever go and check out Plato's map. And many others, based on Plato's descriptions, found that yes, that area had 3 concentric circles, which matched Plato's description of Atlantis and matched other descriptions of Atlantis, and that's potentially where Atlantis was located, or at least the more important part, just like the capital area, and a larger area is underwater in the Atlantic Ocean. But basically, a catastrophic pole shift occurred after that, and they kept doing this over time, and the Orions gained control of the Earth, really. So now, after all this time, that contract finally ended that they made with the Atlanteans, apparently in 2012. And humanity is finally making the choice to take back their power, to raise their awareness, to choose an end to suffering. We finally had enough, right? So now is our chance, and a great opportunity for us to activate our DNA, for us to learn the lessons that we can't just overly rely on our left brain rationale, while completely ignoring our spiritual side to just create non-stop technologies. Because I'm sure you've seen those movies where they continually create technology, and then technology starts creating itself, and it's not good. If we can finally learn our lesson, it's our time to shine. It's our time to create heaven on earth. America is deemed, really, in spiritual circles, as the new Atlantis. Many people are actually awakened here. The majority of awakened souls are here, apparently. So I believe that's for a reason. I think America's on to great things. But the whole world, really, we're going to create heaven on earth. I think we've learned our lesson. We choose spirituality with technology, right? We want to be self-sufficient, and these forms of quantum technologies exist, but we weren't ready for them because they would have fallen in the wrong hands, like last time. And we need to play catch up now and raise our spiritual awareness, because these ETs are out there and they're willing to help us. They're willing to meet us. They're willing to talk to us and advance our society to levels where we don't need to control one another because we believed that there was no other way. We didn't think it was possible for it not to be a dog-eat-dog world and everyone to get along. Oh, that's just crazy talk. Woo, man, there's no way. We can't do that. And I think that's what the foundational idea behind communism may have been, if it wasn't really to trick people into government control. If there was actually any good intent behind communism, I think that was it. But like I told many history teachers or political science teachers, communism is not ever going to be possible unless people raise their spiritual awareness. Not that I'm advocating for communism. I know what's happened with communism. Millions of people died and it's never worked out because we weren't ready, and there's no way we should ever be giving our power to a government if we want such a thing to work, right? Because then they have all the control and we're all equally poor. But what I mean is a form of society in which everyone contributes, everyone has equity and has the potential to be whatever they want to be, right? Without any suffering, peace and love and harmony. And I believe such a thing is possible. I really, really do. And with the right technologies, once a society has all their needs in order and there's really no problems left for them to solve within itself, it can focus solely, finally, on its spiritual development, on its connection with Source. And that's when the magic happens, where all these abilities come in, telepathy, levitation, teleportation, you know, empathy. We already have empathy, but you know what I mean. Higher, advanced forms of empathy. And that's when evolution really starts kicking up. You know, this may have felt like a long time, like our 3D experience, but it's actually one of the shortest, according to the law of unmaterial at least. And this is where we make our choice. You know, do we choose to perpetuate suffering and fear, or do we choose to finally evolve and go with love, go with what's best for not just myself, but myself and the all, because I am a part of everything. I am everything, and everything is me. Okay, so that was kind of like the general history of Atlantis and a little bit of Lemuria and Orions and what may have happened. There's more before that even. There's a whole divine creation story, but this was kind of the main lesson we needed to learn on why we failed as a civilization before, because it was us. We failed. Yeah, we failed. We gave in to temptation of negative beings, and we wanted to feel important. Not the Lemurians. Lemurians are nice, but I guess they failed by not being able to protect themselves, which is also a very important lesson. You always want to be able to protect yourself, because what's the exact quote? A powerful man or woman is not powerful if they don't have any strength. Powerful man is one with the most strength, but one that is able to control himself and responsible with that strength. So you want to have that power, the ability to react accordingly in any situation, which is why I personally work out. Yes, I treat my body as art, and I like to sculpt it as well, but I would like to be powerful, able to protect myself, able to protect others if a situation ever arises. It just gives me that potential. Now, understanding vibration and all that, yes, you won't necessarily interact with anything that may be trying to control you if you're not at a low vibration, but anything can happen. You can slip up, and you know, potential could arise for you to step up and protect. So it's always important to protect. And those that say, oh, we don't need technology, we don't need any sort of weapons, potentially, yeah, you don't. As a society, maybe not, but there's always that threat. So it's good to have a backup plan, in my belief at least. But you have to be spiritually aware. Like I said, with great power comes great responsibility. So you need to be spiritually aware enough to match that power. Otherwise, you will abuse it. Okay. So I hope you learned a couple things from this history lesson. And you know, spread the message. Give it a like if you enjoyed it, and comment what your opinion on this may be. Okay. Take care.